Hello once again. Today we're going to take a look at a really cool vintage typewriter that I have here. This is a Smith Corona Electra 210 electromechanical typewriter from probably the 1960s. Now, before I start today's video, there are a couple of little talking point update thingies that I want to make here. First of all, it's no secret, I haven't been making videos for a few weeks. There's a couple of reasons why. The first one being that I've just been out of the mood lately. I'm not really sure why. But then second of all, as you guys certainly know, this COVID-19 virus has really shook the world and has temporarily changed the way we live, literally, for the next, if we're lucky, few weeks, maybe few months. We don't know yet. Nobody knows. But it's really been hard on everybody, including myself, not the least of which being I'm separated from my fiance. I live in Canada, Bridget lives in the United States. We haven't seen each other in 3 weeks because the Canada-US border is closed now. We can't see each other. All we can do is video chat, and that's about it for now. And it's depressed both of us, it's been hard on both of us, and we don't know how long it's going to be this way. The first weekend when shit really hit the fan, we were planning on taking a vacation, like a 4-day vacation, and we had to cancel that because that was the first weekend when North America really started being hit hard. And they recommended that people don't travel anymore, so we had to cancel that vacation. That was 2 weeks ago now, and it sucks. It really sucks, and I don't know when we're going to be able to see each other again. But it could be a lot worse. Luckily, Bridget and I are both still working. Her job is an essential service, so she's still working, and my job is able to operate without facing the public, so I'm still working for now. And neither of us have gotten sick yet, neither of our loved ones, none of our loved ones have gotten sick yet, so we're doing okay. There's just a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty, and then being separated from each other, and it's hard. The other reason I haven't been making videos is a couple of weeks ago, I accidentally destroyed my phone, and I mean destroyed. Mom and I were on a little day trip. I was driving her car. Her car has a power driver's seat, and at some point my phone fell under the seat, and it fell between the bottom of the seat and the metal rails that the seat rides on. This was while Mom was driving the car, and then later in the day we switched places so I could drive. I lowered the seat and crunch. I completely crushed my phone. I'm really glad it didn't light on fire. I mean, it was crushed. I'm really glad the battery didn't explode. That could have been a really horrible situation, having a fire under the driver's seat in the car. So I'm really thankful that that didn't happen. But yeah, destroyed the hell out of my phone. I had to buy another one. Luckily, being an older phone, I was able to get another one from the same seller for the same price, $165 Canadian. And I'm still waiting on that to come. So for now, I'm actually having to use my Windows phone, which sucks so bad. And I could be filming videos with that, but I just didn't want to bother. So that has added to me being bummed out and not filming videos, is just losing my phone. Now I have to wait for another one to come. And that's why today's video is being filmed with one of the Digital 8 camcorders. So I thank you for your patience regarding that. I am going to try and get in the groove again, because I think in a time like this, it's really important to make videos, you know. People with not a lot they can do, entertainment is one of the few ways that people can escape from the stress and the uncertainty that's going on right now. So if I can make people happy and forget about their worries for like half an hour in a video, then I want to be able to do that. And it helps me feel better too, because I do like doing this. Second thing I wanted to mention, we recently hit 6,000 subscribers, and for that I thank you very much. I'm glad that so many people enjoy the stuff that I make. It certainly keeps me going, that's for sure. Your viewership also makes me a little bit of money, and with that money I'm able to help pay bills, and once in a while afford more cool stuff to make videos of. So thank you very much for your viewership. and for your subscriptions. I really appreciate it. So, let's now look at a very cool vintage typewriter. I got this for Christmas. Mom bought it for me for Christmas. She bought it off shopgoodwill.com. Mom's like, hey, I need something to get you for Christmas. So I went on Shop Goodwill. I had been looking for a typewriter like this, and I linked this one to her. When I got this thing, this thing was abused a little bit in its previous life. Either that or just from being thrown around in storage. This was very dirty when I got it. And also it had some problems. A couple of keys didn't do anything when you press them. That only turned out to be some linkages which had fallen off. I put the linkages back on, which was really tricky. Took a couple hours to do and a lot of finger work, but I managed to do it. And I cleaned it up really nicely. It cleaned up really nicely. I did a really thorough cleaning job on it. I did the inside as much as I could too, so it was just caked with dirt on the inside, but it's a lot better now. And also an issue was the spacebar wouldn't work. You would press it and it would get stuck in the down position, and that turned out to be because there was a dent in the front of the case here, keeping the spacebar from moving freely. So I stuck something in there and pulled the case out, pulled it back out, and now the spacebar moves freely. And then the last issue this thing has that I haven't solved yet, but it's still, you know, it doesn't impede its ability to function at all, is the type slug for the one exclamation point key. The slug is the little part that actually hammers against the platen to print on the page. There's just no slug there on the type bar, so I've got the key here, but the slug is missing. On these particular typewriters, there were two slugs that were removable. You can see by the white keycap here. The plus equals key on this was also a key that you could change out for other characters if you wanted. So those two type slugs are removable, and the keycaps are removable to allow you to put different characters in. And then that just presses on and the type slug attaches to the type bar. So I've got the key but not the slug. It must have fallen off with how much this thing was banged around and stuff. The type slug just must have fallen off at some point. So I don't have it. So you can buy new type slugs, but I haven't found any yet. There's none on eBay. I might just have to buy a whole other typewriter and steal the type slug off that to put on this one. And I might actually do that. I'm looking at getting another one of these on Shop Goodwill. So if I get another one that's, you know, beaten up or non-working or whatever, I'll just steal the one exclamation point type slug from it and put it on this one. And then this one will be 100% complete. But for now, I can function without that. You may remember that Smith Corona Electra CT I had. That had no one key at all. By design, it just didn't have a one key. A lot of typewriters back in the day didn't have a one key. And how you printed the number 1 was you just used a lowercase l, and if you needed an exclamation point, you printed an apostrophe, backspaced, and then printed a period, and that made kind of a crappy but passable exclamation point. So let's take a look at this thing. This is such a cool typewriter. Smith Corona introduced their first electric typewriter in 1958. It was called the Electra 12. And then it was 1960 when they introduced the first electric typewriters based on this chassis and this body design. And those were sold under the Coronet name. And then in 1965, Smith Corona introduced the Electra series that this model is a member of. And there were 4 models: the Electra 110, the Electra 120, this unit, the Electra 210, and the Electra 220. The 2 models that started with 1, the 110 and the 120, they had a manual carriage return, and then the 2 models beginning with 2, the 210 and the 220, they had a power return, and you can see the power return here. And then the models ending in 10, the 110 and the 210, they have a 10-inch carriage, and the models ending in 20, the 120 and the 220, they had a slightly larger 12-inch carriage. So I got pretty much the model I would have chosen if had I had the choice. I got the 210. It's got the 10-inch carriage and the power return. And I like the 10-inch carriage just because it makes the unit a little bit smaller. It doesn't take up as much horizontal space for using it. I also really love the color of this thing. The Electra typewriters came in a few different colors. I got this one in the green, which doesn't, I believe this was called seafoam green, and it doesn't seem to be quite as common as the other colors. And it's just, it's really beautiful. Flip it around here. And I think the color of this is just really beautiful. And look at the platen here, even the platen's green. So the platen color matched the rest of the typewriter. And it's really cool. Other colors that were available, I think the most common was blue, which had a blue housing and a blue platen. There was a really boring gray, which had a black platen. And then there was a brown, which had a brown platen. But the green seems to be slightly less common than the rest of them. So I was really happy to get this because I think it's my favorite color. I really like the green. So yeah, these particular Electra models, there doesn't seem to be very definitive information, but I think they were made approximately from 1965 to 1970. And then the Electra name lived on in later, more modern, cheaper typewriters. I made a video before of the Electra CT, which is a model from the 70s. And then there was the Electra XT, which was Smith Corona's last electromechanical typewriter, I believe, and that was made into the 80s. But these early Electra typewriters, they are just so cool. These are considered some of the best typewriters ever made, at least some of the best electromechanical ones. These are very reliable and very heavily built. If we just take a look again here. Unlike later typewriters like my brother or the Electra CT, which I no longer have, I sold the Electra CT for a small profit, which is nice. But unlike those ones, which are all plastic bodied, this is metal. I'm going to take my ring off because I'm going to be touching this thing. These are all metal. They're really heavily built, and they're very heavy, period. This weighs like probably close to 30 pounds. But you've got really thick metal housing. This cover articulates like that so you can get to the ribbon and the tight basket. This is plastic, but it's just, these are really high quality machines. These were like the last of the really heavily built Smith Corona typewriters. The other reason people love these is just the design. People just really love this design, sort of halfway between the old school, you know, mid-century design and more modern design elements. These are sort of an in-between, but I really love the design. This thing is a joy to use. This is, by and large, my favorite typewriter that I have so far, at least out of the mechanical ones I've owned. I still have electronic typewriters that I need to make videos of someday. But as far as the mechanical ones I've owned go, this is definitely my favorite. This is actually veneer, wood veneer right here. You've got the metal name badge here. That's a little neon power indicator. And then you've got the old Smith Corona logo with the SCM. There was a period for 10 or 20 years when Smith Corona, the company itself, was called SCM, Smith Corona Marchant, because Smith Corona had merged with a company called Marchant, which made adding machines. The other reason I really like this typewriter is because it's very full-featured. It's better featured than any of the other electromechanical typewriters I've had. So in addition to your usual keyboard, and you've got extra characters that you don't see on modern computer keyboards, like the quarter and half. You've got your cent symbol right there. You've got a shift key on each side and a shift lock. But you've got a lot of extra stuff on here too. So in addition to the space bar, you've got a power space, which requires the machine to be running to work. So you hold that down and the carriage moves step by step automatically. And then you've got a half space, which interestingly doesn't need to be powered. So when you press it down and hold it, the carriage moves over by half a space, or half a character, and when you let go, it moves the other half of the character. So just pressing it does do one whole space, but when you do a half, you can do a half space. So If you made a mistake, missed a letter, and you got to squeeze a letter in between two other letters, that's how you can do that. Just hold the half space down, hit the letter that you missed, and there you go. Your power switch is right here. This does support a dual color ribbon, so you have your black and red settings. You can also set it in the middle, which disables the ribbon. That's the stencil mode if you were going to use a stencil. There's your margin release. This is your backspace, which is also fully mechanical. That's your backspace. Weird placement for the backspace, but that's how they used to do it. You've got a manual ribbon reverse here. So this does have automatic ribbon reversing, but if you want to reverse the ribbon manually, you can just do that with this switch. And then a really neat feature of this thing, I think, this key right here that looks like a second spacebar, that's actually your tab key. Oh, there's the dinger. But yeah, that's your tab key, and unlike all the other typewriters I've made videos of that just have preset tabs at every 10 character spaces, this has no preset tabs, and you can set your own tabs anywhere you want, and you can set as many of them as you want. This thing lets you set a virtually infinite number of tabs. I don't know how that works mechanically, but it does, and it's really cool. So I, for example, have one tab set at the very middle of the carriage just for when I'm storing it. And then I have no other tabs beside that, so if I hit tab again, it'll just go to the end of the carriage. And you have to hold the tab key down. If I just press it, it stops when you let go of it. So you gotta hold it until you get to the tab and then let go. And yeah, you can set a tab anywhere you want. Just hit set. And now if I go to the beginning here and hold tab, there it is. And then press it again. There's the other tab. And I can set a tab somewhere else and move a couple of spaces and set a tab again. You can set an infinite number of tabs. It's really cool. And if you want to clear a tab, you just go to the tab you want to clear. And I'm going to hit the clear key. Go to the next one I want to clear. Clear that. Clear that, and you can do all this. You can see I don't even have the machine running. This is all fully mechanical. So now we should be back to just the one tab in the middle. Yep. How cool is that? Tabs that you can just set and clear at will, as many of them as you want. They got rid of this on the later mechanical typewriters, and I think that's too bad. It's a really nice feature. Down here you have your copy set. This is impression control. This controls how hard the type slugs hit the paper. So normally you would just have it set to 1, but if you were doing like carbon copy sheets, you can adjust this all the way up to 10 to adjust how hard the impression is on the paper, so you get good carbon copies. How this works is really interesting, and I'll show you later when we power this thing on. So if we open this cover up, there's your ribbon. I stole this ribbon off the Brother Automatic 12. This did come with a ribbon, an all black ribbon, which is kind of at the end of its life. It was pretty faded. So I put this ribbon in here, and luckily, I'm very glad to see, unlike the Electra CT, which takes that stupid non-standard 1.5-inch ribbon spool size, this actually takes standard 2-inch ribbon spools, so I'm very glad to see that. I'm glad I got rid of that Electra CT. That was a nice typewriter, but it just had some annoying stuff on it. There's the type basket, and if we look over here, you can see the last type slug missing there, the 1 and exclamation point. So I've got to find a type slug to stick in there at some point. You have access to this, I guess you'd call it an idler pulley. Your motor is back here, and then it's got a belt going around to this, and then there's a second belt which goes to a shaft down here, and that actually drives the mechanical bits. So moving on to the carriage itself, there's your line spacing when you hit return. The platen ratchets when you turn it, or if you engage this lever, it turns smoothly. You can also make it turn smoothly by, oh, it's on the left one here. If you push in on this, now it turns smoothly. Very interesting. Your paper bail is right here. These set your margins. I usually go 10 and 75. You got your backrest right here. I cleaned this up with Brasso. This had a little bit of corrosion on it, and it cleaned up pretty well. Your carriage release is right here, so you can move the carriage anywhere. That's on either side. This thing lifts up. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's to facilitate removing the platen for cleaning or whatever. But other than that, I'm not sure. It also says RP on there, and I'm not sure what that means. And then your paper release is right here, and it moves the bail out a little bit, and that lets you stick your paper in. Oh, and I just discovered this little lever right here, which is really spring-loaded, and that seems to allow you to remove the platen. Maybe RP stands for release platen, I don't know. And then of course I showed this on the Electra CT. This has the Smith Corona paper page gauge, they call it, which is a little gauge that visualizes how much space you have left on the paper. You set it to the length of the paper, so 11 inches, so I line up the 11 with the set right there, and then as you go along and your paper is advancing, eventually you'll get to a point, I think usually it takes a couple of turns, you'll get to a point where like a number 2 will show up at the end, and that means you've got 2 inches left, and then you've got 1 inch left. This has a little split in it, so that's another thing I gotta fix. The little plastic has split here. Still turns, but I'll have to take a little droplet of glue and just glue that up at some point, just so it doesn't slip when you turn the platen. So that's about all the stuff on the carriage, and of course it advertises the automatic return, the power return. If we look on the back, very clean looking on the back. Smith Corona Electra 210, and this was made in the USA. And if we move the carriage, oh, it's on the other side. Let me do a margin release. There we go. So this is the info sticker, and I learned that alcohol is a solvent, and I accidentally rubbed the print off this sticker, cleaning it with alcohol. That was very surprising, and I feel bad. You can still kind of read it. So yeah. Yeah, I learned cleaning this thing that rubbing alcohol is quite the solvent. I actually used it to get the paint. This thing had a lot of white paint splatter off on it. And I actually used rubbing alcohol, and it just acted like paint thinner and took the paint right off it. You can see that the bottoms of some of the keys still have white paint on them. But it's so much better than it was. It had a lot of paint splatter on it. But isopropyl alcohol completely solved that. And yeah, I guess it's strong stuff, and took the print right off this. So I've been really liberal before in using isopropyl alcohol, but I might tone it down a bit now that I know the damage it can do. But there it says electric typewriter Series 6E. That's the chassis that Smith Corona based this model on, and based a lot of models on. 117 volts AC, 60 hertz, 1 amp, made in the USA, radio interference free. Hey! And then a ton of patents. It was printed in the USA. So there's that. So yeah, Smith Corona based a ton of models on this chassis. There was the 4 Electra models, but then they based a lot of models under the Coronet series on this chassis. The Smith Corona Coronet models were basically Electras, but with less features. So there was like a Coronet based on the Electra 210, and it wouldn't have the half space or the power space, and it wouldn't have the manual ribbon reverse, and it might not have the manual tab settings. It might just have preset tabs. So if you see a Smith Corona Coronet, it's basically mechanically the same as an Electra, but it's just missing some of the features. The typewriter I'm looking at right now on Shop Goodwill is a Coronet, so I might grab a Coronet to steal the one exclamation point slug off it to put on this one. But yeah, that's pretty much how that works. And then there was another model Smith Corona sold, I think in the 70s, called the Smith Corona Model 70, and it was basically based on this same chassis but with some features missing. Just like when they made dozens and dozens of electronic typewriters that were all exactly the same, they seem to have just glutted the market with tons of different models of electromechanical typewriters that were all based on the same chassis with sometimes negligible differences between them. Really weird, but that's how Smith Corona did. So, I've shown you pretty much all the features of this thing. Let's plug it in and do a demonstration. Oh, I almost forgot to show the carrying case. I did get the carrying case with this. And these are so much better than the later Smith Corona carrying cases, like the one that came on my Electra CT that was just this terrible, cheap, plasticky thing. This is an actual metal case. The handle is plastic, but it's super thick. But the case itself is actually metal. And it's actually really good quality. I think these were made by Samsonite. I've read that some Smith Corona typewriter cases were made by Samsonite, which would explain the quality. But there you go. This was really filthy. I cleaned this up quite a bit. But your typewriter sits in there, and you might have noticed on the back this little socket right here that engages in there, and then the front of the typewriter snaps down on this latch. And then when you want to release the typewriter, you press a button and it unlatches it. But yeah, that's how that works. You can actually keep the typewriter secured in place in case you want to use it in the case. And then there's the foil sticker right here. Made with care, packed with pride. Smith Corona typewriters are made in the USA by American craftsmen. 5-year parts guarantee. Made in the USA. So yeah, there's the case. And it snaps into place like that. There we go. And yeah, so much better quality than the later Smith Corona carrying cases. Very nice. Alright, she's plugged in. Let's turn it on. It's a bit noisy. The motor's a bit buzzy. Probably the rubber bushings have hardened over the years. But it works fine. It's got a nice fast power return. Very nice. And what's kind of cool, Smith Corona did not have to do this, but they chose to do it anyway. The motor is actually a 2-speed motor. Normally it runs in the low speed, but when you hit power return, it switches it to the high speed to give it a bit more speed to make the return faster. And then once the return is done, it goes back to low speed. Very, very interesting. Very nice. So, I mentioned earlier in the video that the copy set switch here functions in a really interesting way. This switch actually literally changes the speed of the mechanism. That's how it adjusts how hard the type slugs hit the paper. It literally adjusts the speed at which the mechanism runs. And how it does that is this idler pulley right here functions like a continuously variable transmission, literally. So if you look right here, the outside belt here is running near the end of the pulley, and the inside belt is sort of running down inside the pulley. But if I start turning the copy set switch, you can see the outside belt has now moved down to the inside of the pulley, and the inside belt has now moved out. So it's changed the effective gear ratio between the motor and the mechanism. It's literally a continuously variable transmission. I'll turn it back here, you can see how the belts adjust. And now it's back to high speed. So the smaller the effective pulley size is for the outside one, the faster the mechanism will run. And the larger the effective size of the inside pulley is, the faster the mechanism will run. So it's literally just adjusting those pulley sizes to change the gear ratio. How neat is that, huh? And you're literally just changing how fast the mechanism runs when you do that. Very cool. So you've seen the power space. I'll put the ribbon on stencil mode here so I can hit some keys without marking the platen. Very good typing action. The type bars really do snap very fast and hard. In fact, if I run my finger across the keys here, look how fast it's able to go without jamming. Crazy, huh? So something else is cool with this thing. Unlike my other electromechanical typewriters, that when you hit the shift key it shifts the carriage, this one actually has a basket shift. I'll hold the shift key, and you can see rather than moving the carriage, it moves the type basket. Pretty cool, eh? So that's how it shifts. So let me put a piece of paper in this thing, and I'll do a quick typing demonstration, and then we'll take a look and see how the print comes out. I keep forgetting I don't have a 1 key. So there's what it looks like. And there's the red ink on the bottom. Very, very nice. Very, very loud. This is the loudest typewriter by far that I own, mechanical or otherwise. But that's no matter when it, as long as it works fine, which this definitely does. Very, very nice. And that's about it. I'll show on the bottom here. So for the bottom, this plate comes off with 2 screws, and that gains you access to the motor and the other mechanical bits. Your power cord comes in there, 4 rubber feet. For some reason, when I got this thing, the bottom cover was off it, and both screws were out of it, and the cover was off it, and I'm not sure why. I was able to find one of the screws in the carrying case, but the other screw I decided to make a computer screw fit, which it does. And that's where the front latch for the carrying case goes in. And I should also mention, this is your typing heaviness control. So you can choose how hard you have to press the keys to type. So if I have it set all the way to the lightest setting, turn it on, it takes just the barest feather touch. Whereas if I turn it up the whole way, and it turns a lot before it stops. I'm not sure why. It was a better system they came up with later with a low-high switch, but now it's turned up all the way, and you have to press down with a bit more force. It feels more like a computer. I should also mention there are 3 repeating keys, the X, the period, and the dash. You just press and hold down, press a little harder. Same with the others. So those are the 3 repeating keys. And that's about it. I think that is all there is to show of the Smith Corona Electra 210 electromechanical typewriter from the 1960s. I really love this thing, and I'm really glad I got this, and I'm really glad it was able to clean up so well, and I was able to sort out the issues it has. All I have to do now is probably via a parts unit, getting another parts typewriter, steal the type slug off it for the 1 and exclamation point to put on this, and then it'll be 100% complete, 100% working. But even as it is right now, this thing is such a joy to use. It's so cool. It's just so heavily built, and it's beautiful. I think this thing just looks beautiful. Like I said, I think the green is my favorite color, and it also seems to be slightly less common than the other colors, so I'm really happy to have gotten a green one. I think aesthetically this thing is just beautiful. Just plop it on a desk in a living room or whatever, and I think it would just be very nice as a decoration too. But it's certainly a really excellent typewriter, really fun to use, and it works very nicely. And if you want one of these, they're not too much to get one. Smith Corona sold millions of these. These are everywhere. Whether you want an Electra or a Coronet or one of the other models based on this chassis, they're everywhere on eBay, Shop Goodwill, whatever, for not too much money. I think once it was all done and shipped, I think Mum paid like $40 for this one, which is a little bit on the upper end, I think. Shipped, if you're lucky, you can get some of these for under $30. They're really affordable to get. And sometimes they have problems. Sometimes they have problems that the average person can't fix, but for the most part, most commonly, when you find one of these, it'll just be perfect working. These are really, really robust machines. But there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Thank you again for your patience while I had that short little hiatus there. And I'll see you in the videos to come.